It was said that whoever danced inside this clock became inseparable. All three of them knew it, but it echoed through Kyle's mind the loudest. They stood peering up at what Kyle described as a giant stone cuckoo clock an old god would hang on their living room wall, if an old god were so inclined. In an effort to crack its code, he'd been writing phase-locked loop equations with lipstick on a boulder when the stone clock came to life. It opened in a rumble that woke the ancient cavern. To science, it was something to be solved. To Kyle, it was a beckoning to crawl inside and be made whole again. He thought the ancient clock would be just a part of his plan to get Alex back where he needed her, but he didn't expect to find himself so stupefied in its presence. The inexplicable dancing of stone set all their mouths agape. In spite of himself, his unlit cigarette dangled from his lip by its rolling paper. Their necks strained under their gaze, up the face of stone pillars carved from the rock wall. In the center of the soaring pillars, a theater of sorts was set. A female silhouette set in stone stood naked over long legs that ended in talons gripping the backs of carved lions. She held aloft what looked like loops of rope, her vast wings tucked behind her. She began to spin. The grinding of the stone as the clock animated was audible, but Kyle put his hand to his chest and noted its frequency as it reverberated through his ribs. A massive door to one side slid open, and another carved figure slowly emerged, rotating in approach to the central form. She was naked, humbled, a pirouette of simple stone curves. They spun on their axis, while the bear circled the divine and continued to the far door, which swallowed it in and closed again. The winged figure slowed to a stop, and the rumbling faded lower and lower. Kyle felt his chest again, noting that the rumbling faded but hadn't ceased.
Not every day you see a miracle.
Alex broke the silence.
Not a miracle.
Nathan responded, crossing his arms.
Man made it. Man will figure it out. Eventually.
Okay, Newton, either way, it was pretty bloody miraculous, and we saw it, which was what we set out to do when we made this pact. I can't even tell my people back home in London that me and my best mate spent my only bleeding vacation breaking into a secured archaeology site.
She came back. Kyle pulled the cigarette from his lip, saying,
"We're not done yet."
He chuckled.
And it wasn't that secure. Who knew navigating the cave would be a bigger complication to this pact completion? I knew the scientists were on leave, but I expected at least a guard. Aren't we, little lucky lads?
Aren't we missing an important element to finish that part of our pact? I mean, I'm sorry, but the bus had 4 wheels when we started down this road. It's just a little weird without Pete.
Alex tilted her head toward Kyle, her long silver mohawk bouncing to one side like perpetual midnight surf. He made no answer and lit his cigarette. He watched the smoke curl from the ember, and she watched him. Then he twisted the length of his wiry frame to her and grinned, both dimples beaming in the dim light. He said,
"Don't you want to know what makes it tick?"
To this, Alex groaned. Behind them, Nathan grunted a short laugh. Nathan, a mountain of a man, seated himself on crossed legs, a boulder among boulders. Alex sat beside him with her lithe back propped against the support of his side. Kyle, always a body in motion, crouched and asked,
"How do you know it was this tunnel anyway?"
The stone curves. We saw this pool down here in the video. The water cut through the rock this way. I just followed the layers that fit with the curves.
She answered, pressing into Nathan's flesh wall.
Shit. I taught you that.
Of course you did. That's what you do, Newton.
She sighed and added,
I so need to let off steam. Can you roll? You always carry.
Nathan only smirked in response and started a joint. One hand he used like a table while the other nimbly separated, scattered, and rolled. The dexterity of those digits with their thick tufts of hair was something to see. Kyle watched Nathan's hands, but saw opportunity in Alex's vulnerable posture.
You got steam? Let it.
He prodded.
I don't know, just ain't the same. The internship? I know we were hot shit when we were ripping up the scene in Lee, but London? Goddamn, my shit just barely flies there. That's what it is. Shit.
She vented.
Ain't shit.
Nathan interjected.
I don't know if I can make it another year. I don't know.
She trailed off. Kyle and Nathan gave each other a knowing glance.
He's right. It ain't shit. It never was. I mean, bloody hell. Do you remember? Do you remember that last show? Our music, our lights, the whole bleeding effect.
Kyle rose and started moving to an inaudible beat.
You remember the way it felt to walk in the streets of Lee, our stupendous town? We could do fucking anything. Everybody knew our names.
His movements intensified into a whirlwind of rhythmic limbs.
And what more, they knew our work. They were mad for it. We fucking owned that town.
He was drumming on his chest, his palms and fingers different instruments beating percussion through his skinny but barrel-built chest. His faded green-dyed head made trails in the pale light like a neon Q-tip dancing at the end of a trip.
Can you hear it, Alex? Can you fucking see it?
He paused mid-motion and hovered next to them, catching his turn at the smoke rotation. He shook his head at the inhale and said through the smoke,
Sucks you left it behind. And now it ain't even what you wanted.
Alex snatched the joint back and snapped,
It is what I wanted. Just not. I didn't know it'd be dead hard.
Nathan slowly reached for the smoke and said,
That's what happens. Society says you gotta go out there. Motherfucking pioneer. For what? Don't need no medal. Don't need no degree. Don't need nothing to say you made it. You somebody now.
He took his toke and ended,
I am who I am. Fuck everything else.
Alex sighed.
Thank you, 10th grade philosophy professor.
Nathan shrugged.
So, do what? Quit?
She argued. Nathan and Kyle exchanged another glance. Nathan gave another shrug. He said under his breath,
Your room is still open.
So move back to Lee? Move back into the house and what? Sell your drugs like Kyle?
Kyle smirked.
There are worse things than being kings of a small town. Paid for this trip. It's just gonna get better. You think this stuff's proper mint? Wait till you try the next strand he's cooking up.
Got the genetics just about right. Almost there.
Nathan added,
I don't know, guys. I mean, you all have a family, my bezies, but...
Alex started. Kyle shushed her.
You came to steam off, not bottle.
He handed the smoke back to her.
Just lean into this and that chunk lug while I figure out when this thing opens again.
Chunk this lug, fairy farts.
Nathan grumbled.
I appreciate the creativity, Nate.
Kyle said into his overstuffed satchel as he rummaged. Out the satchel came a rubber ducky, 2 random PA cables, 3 pixie sticks, pliers, and finally a long stream of curses from Kyle's mouth before he dumped all the contents onto the ground. Alex and Nathan giggled and started picking through the manic mound of crap. Kyle found what he was looking for, a stethoscope, and through a smirk said,
I know. An 8-year-old girl turned hobo all in my bag. Stop your chatting.
They snickered and fondled the pile. Alex's hand moved from a wad of thumb drives on dongles to a pair of bright red sunglasses. to a wadded up sheet of paper which she grabbed and read to herself.
London Sound Lab?
She exclaimed. Kyle immediately snatched the letter from her and wadded it back into his bag.
Jesus Christ, Kyle. You've had an open invitation to work with London fucking Sound Lab, and it's wading in your bag with biscuit crumbs.
I should have burned that thing.
Kyle huffed.
Why would you do that? If your engineering is good enough for them, why?
Even if it was. Fuck them. Fuck London. That dream is dead.
Kyle interrupted. Nathan crossed his arms and added,
Besides, that's the big leagues. You don't know what it'd be like out there. Big fucking risk for what? You don't get out for nout. Might just as easy drop like a brick.
But Kyle, it's...
I don't want to talk about it.
he interjected, and pulled out the wadded invitation. He tossed it to her and said,
Keep it for all I care. I don't want to hear it. I can't be mithered with all this. We only got enough grass to steam out one set of worries, and I'm done talking about my shit, all right? Right now I have a clock to crack.
Leave him to it. He's always better at symbols and all that abstract crap. That shit's too cryptic for me.
said Nathan through a cloud of smoke. Kyle sat at the bottom of the clock with the stethoscope and pencils scribbling over scraps of paper. He drew the clock face, first as a circle, then looked again, erased and corrected. The clock face was an ellipse, a long oval shape plotted with 14 symbols. He listened, he scrawled, he waited for the inspiration. It was said that whoever danced inside the clock became inseparable. He was getting them into that clock. Kyle had filled 3 scraps of paper on all sides and scattered along the margins before he skipped back to where they lounged. Alex thumped her back against Nathan like the tide crashing into a cliff.
What?
Nathan said in reply.
The boys in the science department told me that string theory got its name because the man who discovered it used his own shoestrings in the experiment. Isn't that fascinating?
Alex ployed, feigning coy.
Lexi, they're daft. It's called string theory because when you zoom down smaller than atoms, smaller than quarks, smaller and smaller, the smallest element we've theorized is a string. And a string is basically just a single vibration.
Nathan responded with mild impatience.
A vibration? Like a song? A vibration is the smallest element of a song.
Kyle inquired. Nathan gave a skeptical glance, and Kyle added,
Okay, a teeny tiny song.
Sure, abstract artsy fart. Like a really bloody tiny song.
Nathan offered.
I like the idea that the smallest thing in existence is a song.
Kyle beamed. Nathan said to Alex,
And you're daft if you think I'm buying it. Science department, Lexi? At Uni West London. Even the junior college at Lee, our one train stop town, had a physics department.
Alex shrugged then smirked.
Got you to show your stripes, mister. We theorised. Now sit there and tell me you still don't want to be doing something with that overfed brain of yours.
Make an ass of myself at uni? Nah, thanks.
Nathan said, crossing his arms. Kyle turned to Alex and whispered through skepticism.
You keep eroding away all that stubbornness. You think he'll ever give?
She answered.
Eventually it's got to. It's my tiny song of hope.
Kyle fumbled through his notes and crouched beside them. He drew the clock face in the dirt with his finger.
Ellipsis.
He said, pointing to it.
Ellipsis is a pause. ... That is elliptical.
Nathan corrected serenely.
Careful, Kyle. You don't want to inspire Nate with fantasies of your mum again.
Alex said slyly. Kyle grinned and commented,
Seriously, who the hell wears a full face of makeup and drinks white wine on an elliptical?
Who cares? She makes it look good. Mm. Dot, dot, dot.
Nathan let out a deep chuckle that shook Alex's whole willowy body and made her giggle too.
Bunch of goddamn comedians. What was it you said about an ellipse? Remember that week you weren't sure about Pluto?
I remember.
Alex said, rolling her eyes.
Its orbit sped up on the curve of the straight.
Kyle persisted.
The curve. All orbits if elliptical, not just Pluto. The velocity is determined by.
Nathan began. Kyle interrupted.
Got it. No worries. Close the textbook.
What is it? Right. I can hear that the speed increase and decrease in the vibrations. Since who the fuck can tell you what an hour is if it's 14 nonsensical symbols on a dial?
Ain't a dial. Ain't a circle. It's an ellipse.
Nathan corrected.
Oh, thank you, Captain Pedantic.
You're welcome.
Anyway, I can figure out the halfway point, which means I can figure out the quote unquote hour.
Always a MacGyver.
Glowed Alex.
So what's her story? Twinkle tits up there.
Nathan mused.
You don't remember? I told you, damn, I barely remember. This shit is really good, Nathan. Nah, I got this. She was his, whatever, Ishtar. The one that comes out of the door is Ishtar. The jewelry box ballerina with the wings in the middle is the queen of the dead or whatever. Anyway, the ancient Sumerian, or was it Assyrian? Whatever, it doesn't matter. The story goes that Ishtar went to see her sister, the goddess of the underworld. But in her descent, she passed through 7 gates, and at each gate she had to give a piece of her regalia.
She emphatically pronounced the word like some cartoon queen.
Ain't that a 20-point word?
Chuckled Kyle.
Exactly, it's basically royal swag, jewels and robes and shit. Anyway, she had to give one thing at each gate to pass through it. By the time she gets to the underworld, she is naked. Pure birthday suit. Then on her ascension, she gets each piece back at each gate.
Wait a minute, aren't you missing an important part? Why was she going there? And what happened when she was in the underworld? Aren't those details important?
Kyle probed.
I don't know. Regalia was my favourite part, but there was something about trying to achieve something and facing death, and something about her husband getting stuck there instead of her. Whatever. Just repeat after me. Regalia.
They all chanted like an intoxicated queen of England.
Regalia.
And giggled,
I'm educated now.
said Nathan. Kyle grinned and put the stethoscope into one ear and looked them both in the face.
Almost time to get a closer look. You all ready to play strip poker with the gods?
They climbed the clock face at a jovial pace until they were level with the goddess of the underworld. The 3 stared up at the divine figure and gazed a moment in silence. Alex said softly,
She's bigger than that, I thought. Almost threatening.
Yeah, her boob is bigger than my head.
said Nathan.
So few things are. That's your kind of lass.
Kyle jabbed as he studied the pattern the statues followed along the ground and the chords in the statue's hand. They were all elliptical, he thought. Even the statues. It's less of a dance they're playing out than one orbiting the other. At that moment, the vibration told him the clock was about to revive. Kyle gave Nathan a signal that the time was almost up, and their jovial faces turned sober. He reached out and grabbed Alex's hand and said,
Bullshitting aside, we are your family, and you should come back to us. We miss you at the house. It's empty without you, and
Kyle didn't finish his sentence. The goddess began to turn. Nathan nudged Alex forward toward Kyle and the far right door.
Whoever dances inside this clock becomes inseparable. We should be inseparable.
I don't know.
Alex started. Nathan nudged further, and Kyle pulled her hand. The left door opened, and Ishtar grinded along her path.
I don't know if it's what I really need. I want to come home. But, isn't that just moving backwards?
It's being where you belonged, where you were happy.
Kyle pulled. Alex looked at Kyle's face and at Nathan's. Both were sincere. Her face was confused, perplexed, but her head nodded, and she stepped with them toward the door as it opened and the figure disappeared inside. Kyle, delighted at her motion, stepped backward into the door, but something removed Alex's hand from his. Though there was space and time for Alex and Nathan to enter, some unseen force blocked their way in, or Kyle's way out. Kyle's face turned from delight to panic. As the door began to close, Nathan and Alex both gazed at Kyle helplessly. In the final crack of the door, Alex whimpered,
I'm sorry, Kyle. I think this dance is solo. Some things you have to face alone.
In the darkness, Kyle clawed at the shut stone door. The ground beneath him continued to move, but he walked against it like a treadmill, cursing and panting. There was nothing to grip and no way to move the stone, but he clawed. In the desperation and the dark, there came suddenly a voice. It said,
The way is shut. It was made by those who are dead.
Did a random-ass voice just quote Lord of the Rings at me?
Kyle asked, bewildered.
I knew it'd snap you out of your desperate but stupid attempt to move that boulder. You're no Jesus.
Whoever you are, whatever you are, I need to get back.
You can't get back the way you came in. It doesn't work that way. When you're ready to accept that, we can move on. There is no way back. There is only forward.
Kyle continued to claw and walk the stone treadmill backwards until his legs and his fingers ached. He knew there was light behind him, inside the clock, and a presence with a weird sense of humor. Finally, he took a deep breath and stubbornly crossed his arms before letting the ground carry him away from the door. He watched its darkness fade as he approached a glow, still determined not to face it. He stared at the bleak stone door as the glow grew brighter and warmed his back. When he finally turned around, he saw that he was at the opening of a massive glowing arch, and he was no longer standing on stone. A thin layer of water under his feet reflected the arch before him. The reflected arch became a vast ellipse. In the center, a figure hovered over the water. It spoke.
Impressive, isn't it?
Kyle opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, he stared up and took in the bright, rippling wonder around him. It was difficult to look at. It was so bright. The emanating light echoed in every direction infinitely, and beneath the echoing light, a different kind of light. A warmth moved and shifted. The substance of the arch appeared to be molten and animated. The rippling of the reflection gave the dancing heat and echoing light even further dimension. It was almost too much to take in. Though Kyle could not look away, it was beautiful. The figure that spoke to him moved closer. Its form was the same as the arch. Kyle could make out no face or features through its beaming light and undulating heat.
What is this? What are you supposed to be all floating and glowing?
Kyle challenged.
You tell me.
Some sort of God? Or maybe God with a capital G.
You tell me.
Kyle stopped and looked at his reflection, and the reflection of the floating form before him, and shrugged.
I guess this confirms my status as an agnostic. You can't even tell me who you are. Sure, okay, I'll tell you. I pronounce you Cap G. That's who you are.
Yes, I am.
So, now what?
Are you ready to move on?
Guide the way, Cap G.
I have. It's your turn. You have to give something of value to pass through this gate.
Shit, I left my bag outside.
Kyle rummaged through his pockets.
I've got some Tic Tacs, a lighter,
There was no response.
some Tic Tacs and a lighter.
I don't think you understand what I mean by value. It's nothing in your pockets or worn on your skin.
Cap G explained.
Well, that doesn't fit the legend.
What legend?
Kyle chuckled to himself.
Regalia? Okay, never mind.
So, you tell me, what do I have of value?
So many things. What are you willing to give?
You know, that is a good name for you. Because it's some cryptic shit. Only a god would talk like that. I don't know, that's why I'm telling you.
Kyle expressed, gesturing wide with his arms.
How about I tell you what I know I have, but I'm not willing to give? That way I don't fuck up on this weird supernatural game show you got going on here.
Go on.
Me? I'm not willing to give up me.
What is me?
I don't know, man. It's who I am. It's what's inside.
Kyle hesitated and contemplated in the warmth of the towering gate.
It's my memories. It's my past. It's remembering Alex and Nathan and,
Kyle hesitated.
you know, my family. That's me. That's what I won't give.
So, you know better than me, Cap G.
You decide what I have to give that I ain't. I'm cool with that.
So be it.
Cap G responded, and Kyle shot through the gate to the other side. Left behind with the first gate, his physical body dispersed over that moment in time and space. Through the molten gate and stretched through the heavens like a sheen of oil over water still spiraling with color and life.
God damn it. What the fuck, Cap G? My body? My whole bleeding body? I said I wouldn't give me.
Kyle screamed, though not through lungs.
You said you wouldn't give your memories. That was what me was.
But you killed me. I'm fucking dead. Jesus. You took it all with that fuck you move.
Not true. You are still so much. You really have no idea. Stop freaking out and take a moment to see that you are here. Feel it. Are you here, talking to me?
Cap G soothed. Kyle took a moment to try to assess what he was. He stepped forward, though he had no legs. He had a voice, though he had no throat.
Why does it feel like I have a body, but I can't feel?
He asked.
You're used to expressing yourself in that form. It's kind of like phantom leg syndrome. People still feel it after it's gone.
And what? I have phantom whole body syndrome? If you say so. I have to go back. You need to take me back to my body.
You cannot go back. There is only forward.
Will I ever get it back?
It all waits for you.
My body?
So many things.
God damn riddles. We're in an ellipse, an orbit that has to run its course. I get that. How is anything waiting for me to pick it back up? It's not like dropping your keys on the way to the corner desi and swiping them up again on the way back. An ellipse is a one-way street.
You know what you need to know if you let yourself know. Feel into the layers of your existence and the truth will rise to the surface.
Of course it will. Riddles. Okay, fine. If the phantom shoe fits.
Kyle said sarcastically, but he noticed Capji smiled. He could see a chipped tooth among a row of bright white teeth, and he realized Capji was different. Light still echoed off of him in every direction, but the warmth and movement beneath had ceased, had cooled. They approached the second gate, and it too had ceased its undulating and had grown cold. They were now set, solid shapes of smooth stone, metal, or glass. It was unclear. He walked over the reflection of the beaming arch, but the water made no ripples under his phantom feet. He knew he should be afraid. He had memories of fear, but without the cold sweat on his skin, the rapid heartbeat, the shaking hands, the observation that he should be afraid was merely that, an observation. Other things felt more important, and he recognized that he did feel things, but they were different, distant. The pain of their distance was pain, though a pain he'd never known before. It was a pain he couldn't describe with or without a voice.
Before I even approach that gate, I'm taking inventory. I won't be having you choose for me again. First, let's make sure all of me is here.
Kyle stated pointedly.
I think that's wise. Show me.
Let's go home.
Kyle smirked, and his house appeared around them within the towering gate. The tall living room walls reflected the white light cascading from the gate, and each memory Kyle called upon was cast solid and beaming with light just like Capji. He walked through the bright house, and it filled with fractured light and thundering music. The house was stuffed to the brim and streaming out into the garden with people dancing. Kyle approached himself in the memory, where he was hovering over a laptop and a wide board of controls, one ear in a headset and one ear on the room. His fossilized face was flush with excitement over the pouring out of light. Nearby, Alex's body bobbed to the beat as she turned dials and moved levers working the brilliant light effects that had turned the house into a river of spectral vision. Between them, there was Pete. Kyle approached the memory of the man, petrified in form, in the center, the one that all the light, all the life was orbiting around. He watched as the engineered sounds that Kyle had created were mixed and spun by Pete's long, energetic fingers into a rhythmic pulse. Pete was pounding the beat into the air with one clenched fist. Behind the echoing light and cold surface, Pete's eyes were on fire with passion.
This was our best show. Our last show. It was perfection.
I know.
The memory faded, and Kyle stepped back and plopped down on a chair in the living room, which was now empty except family. Nathan and Alex were clicking through videos on the couch, Nathan looking more like a boulder than usual in this memory. Alex woven round one side of him like a river along a mountain, postured together in that way since they were kids. Kyle and Pete were circling each other through the kitchen, down the hallway, into the living room, swept away in their own language, their own jokes, their own world, unaware of anything or anyone other than themselves. A fiery cyclone gusting through the house until they plopped sideways awkwardly onto the love seat. They inevitably tumbled to the floor in a heap of breathless banter and stayed there paralyzed by their own laughter. Kyle's memories were solidified and radiant, but they bore a distant flame and the pain of its absence. Somewhere in the house, an empty room pulled at him. He wouldn't see it. Kyle let the memory fade. The house was empty, all but the light of the gate.
Wasn't that when you all made your pacts together to come here?
Capji prodded.
Yes. I've seen enough, almost. There's just one more I need to see.
Kyle closed his phantom eyes and opened them again. Two pairs of cold lips pressed against each other, their beams of light echoing through each other, refracting and multiplying. Kyle could remember the warmth and the ecstasy, but it was distant. Here it was opaque and heavy, but it still lit his soul painfully like a crack of lightning, bright and burning. He let it fade out and faced Cap G, who hovered closer and said,
That pain won't get any better the deeper you go. If you're going to give something, give this. Give these memories and spare yourself the pain of experiencing them gutted out. The loss of them won't hurt as bad as having them torn from the inside out.
The fuck do you know about loss?
Kyle snapped.
No! God damn it. Nothing takes these from me. This is where they live, in me.
It's your choice, but we're here again. You need to give something valuable to pass through the gate.
I'm not giving regalia to pass through these gates. These aren't trinkets. What you call valuable things, I call fucking essential elements of my existence.
Why? Why do I have to go through any of these cryptic gauntlets? I can just say no. Sort of, I won't do it.
Kyle declared from behind phantom arms folded.
Then you don't move forward.
So?
Then you remain here.
Okay. Where is here? And how long?
Here is nowhere. It's the space between places. As for time, there is no time. Not the way you understand it. Your experience of staying here would be without time.
What does that even mean?
You wouldn't die. As you already stated, while screaming at me, you, as you understand it, are dead. So you here on this plane are free to linger.
Forever.
Yes, your definition would be forever.
But I'd have my memories.
Yes, the way they are now. They'd never return to how they were. But you don't get it. You can't even comprehend what that word really means. Forever. You can't even fathom the depth. The only thing anything or anyone needs to compel complete madness and utter despair in any human experience is time. Think for a minute about what your experience of 1,000 Earth years would be in this place.
Cap G paused for the weight of his words, then continued.
But that's nothing. Now think about 50,000 years, 1,000,000 years, 100 billion years. But this here is endless time. Sentences of 100 billion years stacked onto each other endlessly. That is the closest you can understand.
Cap G paused to let his words sink in. Kyle stood, weighing his fate.
Is moving on really that hard when you would damn yourself to this endless limbo?
Kyle lingered for a long time, considering his options, what few there were. He looked up and faced Cap G. He stared a long time at that chipped tooth and finally said,
You're right. I can't stay here. I won't give them up. What else do I have?
So many things. What are you willing to give?
Anyone ever tell you you're repetitive?
Yes, you, many times.
Cap G's response sparked something in Kyle. Kyle pulled a ring from his phantom finger and closed his eyes. In his hand, it became a loop of silver thread, like the one the winged death held aloft on the other side of the clock.
Cap G, close those eyes.
Kyle said with an inspired tone. Cap G closed his eyes, and Kyle shouted.
Now catch!
And the impression of something round shot toward Cap G. Simultaneously, the experience was felt of something caught, something flying past him, something thwacking him at one side, something caught in a different way, and nothing happening at all. But as they experienced them, those moments kept echoing out and spiraling. Kyle opened his eyes and looked at the silver loop in Cap G's hand.
That
Kyle said under amusement.
is something very valuable I have.
This thread.
What thread?
Kyle's amusement spread. Cap G looked down at his empty hand, then grinned at Kyle.
I either caught it Or I didn't.
Cap G taunted.
You caught it and didn't. And it hit your side. And I didn't throw it. It's not magic, it's my world. Every tiny particle of every part of me exists as a part of a multiverse. Every minute decision I make propels me forward in my reality, while countless alternative realities splinter off behind me, where every other decision is made simultaneously in their own respective infinitely spiraling out realities. And theirs is, well, splintering off behind them infinitely.
Multiverse theory. Excellent explanation. It was one of Nathan's longer rambles that you actually engaged with.
I told him it's got to be the door to universe theory, and he insisted in the bubble universe. I never thought it was even possible to know. But in this place, it's palpable. Can't wait to rub all those bubbles of wrong all over his face. That's something I can give. Ah, nice one. Cheers. Let's do this. This time it's something I don't seem to be using anyway.
You don't understand. You can't give their existence. What you have is your thread, your link to it.
I still have my past and my future, right?
Yes.
Just as good. Off we go.
You don't understand what it is to lose that link. You don't know what those memories will be without it. Listen to me. Give them. Spare yourself any more pain.
Did I not make myself clear? They aren't going nowhere. They're alive within me. Do one.
In another reality, you were the greatest engineer and DJ in British history.
Don't care. Wasn't mine.
In another reality, you and your true love celebrate 50 years together.
Cap G pleaded. Kyle hesitated, but finally responded.
That's not mine. That's some other version of me, some other version of my love. I want mine. Mine! Stop fucking with me and take it already.
So be it.
Cap G stated, and Kyle shot through the gate to the other side. Left behind with the second gate, his thread snapped and fanned out over that moment in time and space. The endless echoing light spread backward infinitely into the past, but stopped short and bleak at the gate with Kyle on the other side.
Whoa. Wait.
Kyle tried to grasp the change. All the reverberations of light were gone. In its absence, Kyle could make out the features of Cap G's face, dim and dull and still. His face was oval, but his cheeks were little circles perched over a serene smile. There was no hair on his head or his chin, and it seemed to Kyle impossible to tell if he were very old or very young. And though, with the addition of a white beard, he could easily be taken as any engraving of the Old Testament capital G, without it, he also seemed to be a dead ringer for the Dalai Lama, minus the iconic glasses. Kyle stared into his eclipsed face. The whites of his eyes and his chip-toothed grin beamed bright behind the faded facade. Kyle mumbled to himself.
It's done. Now that moment's done too. Oh, bloody hell.
Kyle hesitated, but realized that that hesitation too was conclusive.
Everything is like a stone that drops. No suspense, no chances, no possibility that will ever be undropped.
Kyle realized he would be breathing faster if he had lungs.
As you said, it is done.
The next gate appeared. It beamed no light. Its dark, leaden surface loomed over them.
I need to see them.
Why? Why must you always bring back this house, these memories?
You get mugged, and you manage to keep a diamond hidden in your pocket. When the coast is clear, you look at the bloody diamond.
The house materialized around them. Kyle stepped into the living room and called up the pounding presence of his memory. The show came to life. Darker, a shadow of its former self. The music roared around him, but the sounds landed like lead on each moment. Kyle approached the memory of himself at his instruments and watched him touch his chest to feel the reverberations. Kyle knew those vibrations were there. He could feel them, but they were flat, without possibility. The song ended, and the crowd roared, their voices dull in the stale air. Moving statues carved into their own single paths of motion. Pete raised both forged hands into the air, taking all the crowd could give him, like it was the only thing he'd ever done. Kyle pushed the memory away and fell back again. The experience of possibility was gone and done, and its absence ached.
This was your greatest triumph. Now your only triumph.
Cap G concluded. Kyle pushed through his agony and called forward family again. Kyle and Pete had pulled themselves from their pile onto the love seat. Alex and Nathan sat against each other. All four of their forms were cold and dark.
Oh, give me that. I've got something to show you guys.
Pete said suddenly, pointing to the remote. But Kyle couldn't experience any more of the memory. Every note of every moment lay heavy on him like layers of sudden stops, wanting for even the smallest shudder. And he knew just outside of his peripheral, an empty room gathered darkness to it like a vortex. It stayed out of focus as everything faded.
The permanence is deafening.
This is as was warned and will always be as it is now.
Came Cap G's soothing voice. Even it didn't soothe as it used to. Kyle pulled some measure of strength and called forward one more memory. The leaden lips pressed together in the dark, heavy, with dark constancy. It faded off. The kiss was somber, fatal. Kyle moaned slightly.
What's dead is so dead here. So very completely dead.
I know, but the next gate is here.
Why are you doing this to me?
I'm not doing this. I'm only here to guide you.
Why? Why do you care? You talk like a benevolent God, but you torture like fire and brimstone. Which one is it? They say Jesus loves you, but do you love me?
Always.
Then help me escape. Help me get out.
This journey only has one direction. Forward. I'm here to help you make it through. If you listen to me, you will make it.
So you're telling me that I'm doing it wrong? I can't go through this torture chamber in my own way? Then tell me how to make this stop. How do I get out of here?
Kyle seethed through suffering.
I have no power here. It's your decision. But if you do what I advise, you can get through as painlessly as possible. Stop your suffering. You already know dead is not even the bottom. The pain goes so much deeper. Let it all go. You're not made to carry the past down with you into the dark.
Cap G pleaded.
I get it. You're trying to help, but I can't. Anything but these.
I'm your only help, and I'm a floating being you've named after the omnipotent. But you won't take my advice. So, all right, genius, it's your turn.
Cap G's words somehow sounded simultaneously elevated and sassy.
Okay, what have I got? What have I got?
Kyle mumbled to himself, searching.
So many things. What are you willing to give?
I knew you were going to say that.
Kyle came back before pushing deep into concentration.
Okay. Feel into the layers of my existence and the truth will rise to the surface.
Kyle mumbled over and over to himself. He laid his phantom hand on his phantom chest and scanned his memory, zooming out from the house further and further out in his mind. Britain grew small, then the surrounding continents. When finally he envisioned a pale blue dot, Kyle smiled with inspiration.
Cap G, close those weird eyes of yours.
Cap G obeyed.
See the earth, a pale blue dot.
I do.
What do you hear?
It is quiet.
Come closer until you can hear something.
Kyle invited and Cap G zoomed closer and closer, the oceans and continents coming into view.
I don't hear anything.
Come closer and listen harder.
They zoomed closer, then there, hovering over a large pair of islands on the edge of a continent, Cap G said,
There I can hear vibrations. I mean, obviously. That's Britain, which definitely has some noisy humans.
Obvious, is it?
mused Kyle.
Is it obvious that there is life on that pale blue dot without knowing, without memory? Let's just see.
Kyle spun Cap G's focus and stopped over land that was less recognizable.
You feel it here?
Yeah, different, but still jumping.
Cap G responded.
Let's see where we are. Pull back.
Kyle invited. They pulled back their focus further and further, noting the alien terrain until something became clear.
That's an eyelid.
That's my eyelid.
Kyle added, and they opened their eyes.
You know, I knew what you discovered as soon as you smiled, but thank you for the picture show.
Cap G was pleased.
I figured that you know what I know. But I think I was convincing myself. I know that a percentage of me isn't me. I'm like a place myself, with all these microorganisms occupying me like some kind of back alley ecosystem.
Yes, there's always something bigger than you and something smaller than you, and they're all coexisting on top of each other. You're not just an ecosystem, you're a planet to all the life that lives in you, more than you realize. You are occupied, and your soul is many souls shared together.
Kyle thought of his occupied eyelid and imagined compulsive blinking. He said,
I have something to feed that tyrant gate. Let's get on with it.
Cap G hovered closer and pleaded.
Those memories, without these souls, you aren't ready. This is more a part of you than you know.
Do not start after my memories again.
Kyle snapped.
I've played my part in this dark bargain. There is only forward. I get it. I won't give my memories. So I found something else. Let's do this.
You are a masochist, you know.
And so are all my little critters. And they can go first, I insist. Just do it already.
He braced himself, feeling that he'd grind his teeth if he had them.
So be it.
Cap G stated, and Kyle shot through the gate to the other side. Left behind with the third gate, a flutter of glimmering ghosts flew out over that moment in time and space. Their tiny vibrations sang tiny songs over the plain. Their hollow home soared ahead without them. Kyle fell to phantom knees. He opened to let out a guttural howl, but it was hollow.
Everything is so thin.
Kyle said.
Like butter scraped over too much bread.
Added Cap G. Kyle looked up at him suspiciously. He was smiling down on him through his chipped grin. He was transparent, like blown black glass.
Yeah, Bilbo, just like that.
Kyle strained to say, still bowed.
I need them.
Don't make it worse.
I have to.
Cried Kyle softly. His emptiness consumed him, and he felt dry, vacant sobs.
I need them.
He repeated, and the house materialized around them. The fragile crowd filled the house with dance, like a moving menagerie of shadow glass. The performance was over, but the party raged on, dark and delicate. Kyle watched himself standing next to Pete, their hollowed hands clasped together as Amanda extended the invitation to London Sound Lab toward them. It was all the experience Kyle could bear of it. He sat back, convinced he'd shatter from glass to glitter over the armchair. Kyle pulled his family to him, the brittle pairs in their respective couches. Pete had showed them the video leaked from a secured site where scientists were studying an ancient stone clock with stone figures that dance when, scientifically, they shouldn't be able to. He told them that whoever danced inside the clock became inseparable. And then he'd put a ring on Kyle's finger and said,
That's where we would be married, if I had my way. We'd be the fellowship of this ring, but one does not simply walk into a secured archaeology site and have a ball.
said Pete.
Why not? You don't think we could figure it out?
I could start by finding the security schedule.
Kyle added. Pete's dark, brittle lips curled to one side and he said,
With my help, I know you could figure out all the logistics.
The memory faded. Kyle was reaching the end of his strength. The words were hollowed out and muffled by permanence. And nearby, a black hole in an empty room grew wider, grew stronger.
Couldn't make it all the way to the pact, could you?
Acknowledged Cap G.
Nah,
Will you at least spare yourself the pain of the kiss?
Kyle paused but said,
nah.
Then lips of the thinnest black ice pressed into each other. The threat of shattering apart was all Kyle could feel, and he dropped it away and moaned.
You have another chance to decide.
Cap G stated, softly, as Kyle noticed the imposing gate of glass and darkness overhead. Kyle screamed and rushed at the gate. He pushed and could go no further into it. He stormed to the side but found that he landed back at the gate, and Cap G's bemused expression. He thrashed at the arch but made no contact.
Those phantom arms failing you?
I'd be out of breath if I had lungs.
Responded Kyle in his frustration. He laid his useless phantom body down.
Help me, Cap G.
Kyle wept.
Let them go.
Still repeating yourself. You don't understand. I can't let them go. I can't let him go. He's still alive, but only in me. Anything else.
You tell me.
Kyle laid his existence on what was like support. He knew it wasn't the ground supporting a body, but there was something still there supporting him.
Cap G, don't get me wrong. You're an excellent floater, top notch. Can you do anything but float?
You tell me.
You can lie down beside me and see this.
Yes, I can.
Cap G laid his thin, black glass body, cold and permanent, down beside him. They both stared up at the arch. It too was cold, dark, and hollow.
These memories, I can't let go of that life. All of it is supported by something unseen. No man ever stands alone. We all stand on the shoulders of all the people before us. There's a mountain of human experience under me and I can't see it.
Kyle said through exhaustion.
You're staring backwards, but not further than your own tragedy. That history gives those memories the context that makes them matter. But you can't handle them without it, without any human history, and you know that. But you won't have it any other way, will you?
Nah, you're right. I can't let him go. You can take my human history, but you can't have him.
So be it.
Cap G stated, and Kyle shot through the gate to the other side. Left behind with the fourth gate, billions of voices, stories, and symbols scattered over that moment in time and space. In one step, a man without mankind took a giant leap into the unknown. Kyle was aware of confusion, cold, dark, hollow confusion. Cap G was there. He expressed his awareness. They communicated, but language was gone. Kyle stumbled forward, unfamiliar with his phantom form.
I need to see what this pain was for.
The house materialized. The memory of the show was there at its end. Himself and another held each other's hand, so cold and fragile. an invitation was handed only to Kyle, and the hand that once held him jerked away angrily. Kyle dropped the memory.
Why? Why does this thing they gave me fill me with so much anguish? It fills me with pride and excitement and guilt and sorrow. How could an object contain so much conflict? And there's more. I'm supposed to burn it, but I'm hiding it. Why? Why would I hide something I'm so proud of? I don't understand.
The depth of his agonizing confusion stopped him. He knew there were no answers here, only questions and their pain. He sought comfort and so pulled up another memory, one that he knew had 3 people he treasured. But as soon as he called it forward, the cold darkness pulling from the empty room was too massive to bear.
Why can't I look at it? There's so much pain here. Why?
Capji started to approach him delicately. Kyle said,
There's one that calls to me more than any other.
and before Capji could intervene, cold and confounding lips, like the most brittle glass, came together. Kyle shook under the torment.
Be still. You can still move on past them.
Capji soothed.
I don't understand why I clung to such pain.
Do you want me to take these?
Yes, I've suffered enough.
Come with me. We'll move on.
Please take them.
So be it.
Capji stated, and Kyle shot through the gate to the other side. Left behind with the 5th gate, Kyle's gutted memories shattered across that moment in time and space. Their pain and their passion were left waiting for him, needing him. In the absence of suffering, Kyle found himself experiencing only what was. He existed. There was a presence in connection with him that was separate from him, and before him there was a shape that existed separate from the surrounding space. He was moving toward it. The separate presence communicated to him.
We've made it so far. Another gate approaches. Something valuable must be given to pass.
What do I have to give?
So much. What are we willing to give?
Kyle explored his existence deeply.
I think I understand what remains.
I knew you would. Together we can make it to the other side.
No. It's you I have to give. I understand now. You are my capacity for abstract thought.
There was sorrow, then a response to Kyle's explanation.
But you need me. We were going to make it all the way together.
What's left after I lose you is too valuable. As long as I have courage and hope, I can make it.
There was sorrow, then eventually there was acceptance.
So be it.
Was the last connection, and Kyle shot through the gate to the other side. Left behind with the 6th gate, any capacity to experience existence as anything other than the cold, fatal reality that it is spread over that moment in time and space, stretching through the heavens like a film of paint, every painting, every idea, and Cap G still making sense of the void as his creator moved beyond him, deeper into the void. Only the cold end of the universe was ahead, the end of existence. Ready to shed its courage at the 7th gate, a tiny song of hope approached the death of time. Eclipse. A tiny song of hope emerged from the death of time. It gathered up its courage and continued. As it passed, a new separateness covered over his existence like a layer of paint. There came a voice.
Did you miss me?
Always.
There was a shape that existed separate from the surrounding space, and he was drawn to it.
It all waits for you.
What does?
So many things.
said Capji serenely. Kyle shot through the 10th gate to the other side. As it passed, the scattered sands of shattered memories gathered themselves round him and reformed. He was recollected,
I need to face them.
said Kyle.
I know.
Kyle closed his eyes, and the house materialized around them. Before he opened them, he felt the eye of the black abyss was near, pulling him with silent violence. He opened his eyes to the door of the empty room from the inside. There was water under his feet. He didn't understand why he couldn't turn and face it. He stepped backwards, slowly, until his heel met a surface that stopped him. The door gave him no answers, and somewhere Capji waited. Though it summoned sorrow like nowhere else, this was a sacred place where Kyle was to be alone. Kyle forced a slow revolution on his axis to finally face the dark side of his memory. There, in a porcelain tub, the body of his love lay floating over his own reflection. The reflection was a perfect mirror of motionless form. Kyle gazed down at his memory in its form, cold, dark, and hollow. He trembled at his overwhelming desire to kiss those lips of thin black ice, but the fear of shattering proved stronger. Kyle tried to understand the utmost agony that washed over him, witnessing this dark, brittle body over its lifeless mirror, and the feelings of desire, remorse, despair, and above all, guilt. There was a syringe on the ground beside the figure's hand, which dangled out of the tub, holding an invitation. Kyle knew this invitation. He knew that it filled him with pride and with guilt. He knew that it was what killed him, but he didn't understand how. Behind him, the door became an arch, reflecting its completion in the mirrored floor. Capji was just outside of it, beckoning him to move on. In the silence, Kyle could see Capji's mouth making the words, "It all waits for you. So many things." Kyle shot through the gate to the other side. As it passed, a liquid lucidity assembled around him. He felt landed and laid claim to a solid stance in all the histories and voices that came before. But the relief of understanding was brief.
I'm not the only one who repeats himself. You do have a pattern. So, shall we?
Suggested Capji. He had a voice. He was not confounding, but still his form was a transparent sheath of shadow. Kyle called forth the house. The show boomed in its distant shell of a memory. Kyle let the brittle moments play over him as he watched from behind. The backs of the three artists bobbed to the beat, but from this new vantage point, it was clear the one in the center stood taller, elevated on a pedestal. Kyle picked up a poster from the floor and remembered how it read. In the center of the vortex of graphic colors was one name, Pete's, only Pete's. He let the poster and the memory fall and fade. Kyle stepped back and leaned against the hallway wall. He said,
There are so many things that I hide from myself.
Maybe there was something more important that you were protecting. Maybe there was something you needed to keep alive.
replied Capji. Kyle pulled up more memories, several of them. He used the hollows, the dark transparencies of everything to peer through walls. He watched as memories of Kyle's invitation in Pete's hand flapped wildly in the air over Pete's pacing. Memory after memory, Pete paced from room to room yelling. The white invitation waving over his head was anything but a flag of surrender. He waved it like a claim to words he found righteous. Kyle's memory self-curled in defeat or denial or both, with the conflict of pride and guilt consuming him. Through three walls, Kyle watched Alex and Nathan whisper worry to each other with helpless faces. The thin glass figures, whispering, marching, retreating, faded away.
Even under all this denial, He was the love of my life.
Kyle said while pulling up one last memory. Thin black eyes came together in passion remembered without heat. They came apart and spoke.
Do you love me?
Pete asked,
Always.
was Kyle's response, and the frail words and form faded.
He was, and he is. Here in you, he lives.
Kyle knew that those were his own words, but even under the pain that still rushed through the disemboweled memories, something else disturbed him.
It all waits for you,
said Capji, revealing the door to the kitchen that turned into an arch.
So many things.
Sneered Kyle.
so many things.
So be it.
Kyle shot through the gate to the other side. As it passed, a vast homecoming of tiny songs enveloped him. Their shadows filled him, whole and heavy, still dull and laden with permanence. Capji hovered to Kyle in his lead-like form, his chip-tooth grin beaming white with the whites of his eyes. He said,
You need them. Go to them.
Kyle looked quizzically at Capji and said,
What? Am I late?
A wizard is never late.
Capji's amused grin pulled to one side. Kyle looked at him half charmed, half suspicious. The house materialized around them. Kyle stood in the kitchen, watching. The kitchen pass-through was like a cinema screen, playing in permanence his greatest triumph, his only triumph. Two artists stood hand in hand while a single invitation was handed over. There was only one opportunity handed to two lovers, but there was only one outcome, and it was dark and dull and stagnant, like a tub of water that never drains, or air trapped inside a bottle. Kyle faded the film. He leaned forward on the counter and could see the front door across from him. Unconsciously, he called a memory of it opening. Alex stood before it with Pete. Her long gray mohawk gleamed like silver against the placid surface of a leaden face. She was leaving. Kyle's memory self and Nathan sat together in their sadness on the couch, but Pete was furious.
How could you leave us?
He fumed.
We aren't just your band, we're your family.
Stop it, Pete. I've had enough. I've been dammed up in this fucking two-bit town too long. There's a whole bloody world out there, and I've finally caught a wave. Maybe someday you'll forgive me, or even better, maybe it'll break into that single-minded skull of yours that there's nothing to forgive, because I'm not leaving you. I'm just moving on.
Alex finished, then went through the door. Pete slammed it behind her. The sound burned into the memory. She left and could never not leave. Pete turned his furious eyes to Kyle and Nathan. Kyle dropped the memory immediately.
He was so angry. I'd buried his manic ways so deep down under everything.
Of course he was angry.
Snapped Capji.
He took her decision as an affront. To him it was a personal injury. You four had built a home, a career, and a family together. How could she just leave it?
Right.
Kyle agreed hesitantly.
That was how he took it.
You miss him, don't you?
Kyle looked into Capji's challenging expression, then slowly replied,
Always.
You should see him, in your own way, in that one perfect moment you cherish most.
Kyle cautiously closed his gaze from Capji and called forward the kiss. No longer brittle, but still void of any possibility but its own. The lead lips came together and came apart. Heavy words streamed out.
Do you love me?
Always.
We only need each other. Together we can make it all the way.
Pete said conclusively, and Kyle let it fade. Cap G came closer and said,
I love that kiss. It was perfect.
Then Cap G approached the door to the living room and revealed the ellipse it became. Kyle's apprehension grew.
It all waits for you.
Kyle said nothing, but stared first at his chipped grin and then into his eyes. Then he said with a heavy voice,
Is he waiting for me? Is he waiting for me on the other side?
So many things.
Kyle shot through the gate to the other side. As it passed, the wide expanse of fray wove itself back together and interlaced its ends to the shining web of uncertainty, still echoing its endless light. Kyle felt enlightened, and he said so.
It's enlightening on this side. So much brighter.
Cap G gave a small, delighted chuckle, the tone of which sent Kyle soaring through uncertainty tinged with uneasiness.
You need him. Go to him.
Kyle said nothing. He simply stepped forward into the materialized house, while his gaze stayed unflinching on Cap G.
I know I have this link to unending possibility, but there's really only one memory. But I think its hold is too tight. I need a new angle on it.
Kyle said as he walked to the edge of the living room and walked up the wall and to the ceiling. There his existence hung, and he closed his phantom eyes. Directly below him, in the center of everything, amongst the disheveled aftermath of the show, on a couch folded out into a bed, Kyle remembered himself and Pete. They lay on the bed, their feet at the head. Their heads hung off the foot, and they stared up at the ceiling.
It's still ringing in my ears. The echo of our success just keeps beaming. Boom, boom, boom.
Kyle said, thumping the beat onto his chest.
Is that success thumping in there, or your overgrown ego trying to get out?
Pete said bitterly, feigning playful. Kyle turned his hurt expression to him. Pete put the invitation between their gaze. Kyle turned his gaze back to the ceiling and let out an exasperated sigh. Pete curled round Kyle and said in a pacifying voice,
I just don't want a piece of paper to come between us. Are you going to leave me for them?
Nah, of course not.
Kyle snapped quickly and conclusively.
I'd never leave you behind.
To this, Pete smiled, his eyes sparkling passionately. He held Kyle's face and kissed him deeply. The lips of two lovers came together, their beams of light echoing through each other. The warmth was still distant and pained, but Kyle shuddered at the thrill of the memory. Pete pulled away to speak. Through his chipped tooth grin, he challenged.
You love me?
Kyle gazed at the deeply familiar shape of Pete's flawed smile and said,
Always.
We only need each other. Together we can make it all the way. Burn it.
he said, crumpling the letter in his hand.
You couldn't do it alone anyway, and you know it. You need me. If we want to make it big in London, we can do it together. You need me. You were nothing without me, and I can't let you move forward without me.
Pete beamed lovingly and wrapped himself tighter around Kyle, his face so close to his, they breathed each other's breath. Pete gave a small, delighted chuckle and said,
You shall not pass.
Kyle's memory self smiled, but stared up toward the ceiling. He wanted for air and imagined himself walking along the ceiling like it were a blank, uncluttered floor.
Promise you'll burn it.
I promise.
There was a tiny oval window at the top of the room, and both Kyle's memory and Kyle gazed at it longingly. The memory faded. The window remained. Capji came to the center of the living room where the memory had been. He gazed up at Kyle and said,
You don't have to leave, you know. You could stay.
Forever?
Forever. You'd have your memories. They're almost completely complete. And so customizable, don't you agree? You can see only what you want, when you want. Plus, you'd have me.
You. Any way I want you.
Kyle said, welling with remorse. Kepchi's form melted into a familiar shape. It walked the floor, bouncing on long, energetic toes, and lit the room with bright, fiery eyes. Behind them, the front door became an ellipse.
Yes?
He said with Pete's voice.
But I have a choice.
There's always a choice. What is out there without me? You don't have to let me go. Here, I live in you. This can be our time in a bottle.
There is no time here. This is just bottled air. Stagnant. And I need to breathe.
Do you love me?
Always.
Kyle stood up and came closer to his beloved. They stood gazing into each other's eyes, one planted firmly below, while the other hung from above.
I'll always love you. I worshipped you. You were my fire. You were my world.
You broke your promise. Stay with me and I'll forgive you.
I did break my promise, but I should have never promised it. It was my turn to lead. You should have followed me to London, but I failed you.
You failed me. Yes, you failed me.
Yes, I failed you by letting you contain me. I crumbled under your jealousy, your bitterness, and worst of all, my own guilt. That was how I failed you. But I won't fail you again. I will always love you, and I will carry you with me. I will remember you, all of you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But knowing me, I'll linger on the beautiful, because you are the closest thing to God that a 2-bit agnostic boy from Lee like me could ask for.
They shared a smile, and then,
Let me go.
You're leaving?
he said, gesturing toward the front door.
I am. But that's not my way out. I can't follow you anymore. I have my own way out.
Kyle said, and kissed him slowly. He felt all his passion, all his warmth and remorse and guilt and life waiting for him on the other side of that kiss.
So many things.
He said with a smile and pulled himself away. Kyle opened the tiny oval window at the top of his beloved memory and shot through the gate to the other side. As it passed, the undulating warmth of his body coated over him like the layers of an onion. Just as suddenly, a stone door slid open with a deep rumble, and Kyle came pouring out onto the ground behind the spiraling statue of Ishtar.
Kyle!
Alex yelped. Her and Nathan sprung from the ground where they'd been waiting and were instantly by his side. Alex was a flood of worry.
Are you okay? What was inside? Can you hear me, Kyle?
Nathan hovered with silent concern and curiosity over her. From his heap of self still lying on the ground, Kyle raised one poignant finger in the air to give him a minute. His other hand ran fingertips over the textures of the ground beneath, reveling in the divine sensation of sensation. They waited, breathless. Then suddenly, Kyle began to rhythmically contract, breathing from his diaphragm. Alex laid a hand on his back and said,
It's okay. Give it a good cry, yeah? Tell us what happened. We're here.
Kyle's contractions grew stronger and louder, and what they thought was suffering showed its face to be unrestrained laughter. He looked up into their warm faces and laughed. Alex wrinkled her nose, then smacked him on the back. Through a smile, she said,
Bloody bastard, I thought you were hurt.
Maybe I am. I don't know.
Kyle defended through his glee.
I feel really fucking good though. So maybe not.
He pulled himself up, carefully checking all the arms and limbs, awed by the experience of completeness.
Don't leave us in suspense. What happened in there?
Probed Nathan.
Yeah, inquiring minds want to know.
Pushed Alex. Kyle started to speak, but stopped and looked around them. He answered,
I'm not sure I actually remember. How long was I in there?
An Ishtar hour or whatever, so that it is said that whoever dances in the clock becomes inseparable. Bullshit was just that. Bullshit.
Alex scoffed.
Well, actually, that feels right. I feel inseparable.
Yep. Sounds like bullshit.
Grunted Nathan.
No, I mean it. Yeah, that's how it feels, inseparable.
Kyle stated from his daze and grinning expression, and then,
We're all going to die. Isn't that fucking amazing?
he was all dimples beaming.
Wait, Lexi, you have something of mine. Can I see it?
The invitation you pitched at me? Sure.
She said and handed him the wadded paper.
Who'd be more likely to throw trash at you in a huff only to quietly ask for it back? Excuse me, I'm going to need that. Sorry, thank you, right, cheers.
Kyle mocked. They snickered, eased by his sarcasm. Kyle read parts of the invitation again.
Their offer, you going to take it?
She asked.
You tell me.
He said with bright enthusiasm and a wide smirk as he carefully ironed out the wrinkles and folded it into his pocket.
So who's next?
Nathan growled sarcastically.
No, you really should.
Kyle said sincerely. He looked both of them in the eye and reached for Alex's hand.
You can't be afraid of what's on the other side. You can't be afraid of the unknown, and you can't be afraid to go it alone. All you need is courage and hope, and you can make it.
Who knew? Kyle got deep.
Nathan sneered, but Alex was listening earnestly.
And no matter how deep into the darkness you go, you can't give up. You can never go backwards.
Kyle concluded, squeezing her hand. He started to climb down the clock face.
Where are you going?
Alex asked.
I need to breathe fresh air. Don't worry. We'll meet up later. There are things I want to see. So many things.
Kyle called back from the way out. As he left the cave, he stopped and looked behind him. Alex was pressed against Nathan's side. Their faces were turned to each other, and words flowed from her lips. Kyle hesitated, watching. Alex's face was resolute. Her eyes were warm, and slowly, Nathan unfolded his arms. Kyle smiled and moved on out of the cave.